Welcome back to Crime Time Inc. Let's rewind the clock back to April 1980. Picture London, bustling city life going on as usual. But inside the Iranian embassy, a completely different story is about to unfold. 6 armed men burst onto the scene. They were members of this group called the Democratic Revolutionary Front for the Liberation of Arabistan. They take everyone inside hostage.
This group was made up of Iranian Arabs. They wanted autonomy for the Khuzestan province in Iran. They saw what was happening with the Iranian Revolution and that hostage crisis in Tehran, and they thought, okay, this is our chance. This is how we can get the world to pay attention and really put pressure on the Iranian government.
Right. It's all about seizing that moment. So how many people were caught up in this?
26 in total.
Wow, 26.
Embassy staff, visitors, even the policeman who's guarding the entrance, a PC Trevor Locke.
Okay, so we've got this really intense situation unfolding. But one thing that stands out to me is the leader of these hostage takers. He went by the name Saleem. And he doesn't really fit the typical image of, a terrorist. He's described as intelligent, articulate, fluent in multiple languages.
Yeah, Saleem's real name was Oan Ali Mohammed. And his background is fascinating. I mean, he was university educated, came from Khuzestan himself, so he was directly impacted by the suppression of this Arab sovereignty movement. He had actually been imprisoned and tortured by SAVAK, the Shah's secret police. So you can see how this blend of, political ideology and very personal grievances were driving him.
So a very complex individual then. I mean, obviously he had demands.
Right.
Release of prisoners in Khuzestan, safe passage out of the UK. But at the same time, he keeps saying he doesn't want to hurt anyone. It's almost a contradiction, demanding this radical action, but then claiming he wants peace.
Actions speak louder than words, though, right? I mean, the very act of taking innocent people hostage is inherently violent. Maybe this insistence on no bloodshed was a tactic, a way to make himself seem like a reasonable negotiator and, sway public opinion.
Trying to control the narrative. Now let's talk about PC Locke, that policeman trapped inside with the hostages. As these gunmen are storming the embassy, Locke manages to hide his service revolver. Talk about a high-pressure situation.
The level of composure that takes is unbelievable. Try to put yourself in his shoes. You're surrounded by armed hostage takers. You've got this weapon, but using it could have terrible consequences for everyone around you. That's a chilling level of calculated risk.
And then this whole siege drags on for 6 agonizing days. On one hand, you have the UK government standing firm, absolutely no safe passage, no negotiating with terrorists. But on the other hand, you have these police negotiators working tirelessly, trying to de-escalate everything and get the hostages released safely.
It was a high-wire act. They had to project strength, right? You don't want to encourage future acts of terrorism, but they also needed to resolve this immediate crisis peacefully, if at all possible. But behind the scenes, things weren't so simple.
I was going to ask, what else was going on?
While the negotiators were talking, a highly trained SAS team was quietly moving into the building next door, getting ready for a potential rescue mission.
So they had the best of the best ready to go.
Yeah.
Did they just plan to storm the place, or was it more strategic?
The SAS are known for their meticulous planning and execution. They were training constantly at their base in Hereford. They even had this facility called the Killing House, where they would run these mock hostage rescue drills.
A killing house, that sounds pretty intense.
It is basically a life-size replica of a building designed for realistic, close-quarters combat training. So when the time came, they were as prepared as they could possibly be. And in this case, they weren't taking any chances.
So while the clock is ticking, they're gathering as much intel as they can. Tell me more about what they were doing.
Their surveillance was top-notch, really ingenious. They drilled listening devices into the embassy walls, hid bugs in the food cartons that were being delivered to the hostage takers. They even rerouted flight paths over the embassy to cover up the noise from their drilling operations.
Oh, they really pulled out all the stops. So with all this prep, what finally pushed them over the edge to launch the raid? What was the breaking point?
As the days went by, the strain on everyone was just immense. The hostages were living in constant fear. The gunmen were getting more and more agitated. The pressure on the negotiators was just building and building with every hour.
So it's a ticking time bomb. What was the event that finally lit the fuse for the SAS raid?
Well, Saleem started to become more unpredictable, and he ended up killing one of the Iranian hostages who'd been, openly defying him.
That must have been a turning point. Was that the trigger then for Operation Nimrod, the SAS assault?
Now, Prime Minister Thatcher had set a very clear rule: 2 hostages killed and the SAS goes in. But there was this miscalculation about the time of death of that first hostage, and the authorities thought that a second hostage had actually been executed. And that tragic misunderstanding That's what led to the raid.
So Operation Nimrod was set in motion based on inaccurate information.
Yeah.
What did this operation actually involve? How did they approach such a high-stakes situation?
Picture this, the evening of May 5th, 6 days into the siege. The SAS, they're in that building next door, poised, ready to go. And they get the order to execute Operation Nimrod. It was a symphony of coordinated action designed to overwhelm the hostage-takers with speed and precision.
Wait, symphony of coordinated action. I always thought they had a reputation for being a bit more, well, forceful.
Forceful, yes, but not reckless. They had 6 entry points planned. Teams would abseil from the roof, some would blast through windows, and even a group storming the basement. The idea was to hit them from every angle all at once, create chaos and confusion amongst the hostage-takers.
Sounds incredibly risky. Were there any close calls during the raid? Moments that could have changed everything.
Absolutely. One of the most terrifying moments was when an SAS trooper was coming down the back of the building and he accidentally smashed a window with his foot. The noise instantly alerted the gunman inside. And to make matters worse, his rope got tangled, and as he was trying to free himself, the balcony curtains caught fire.
I can't even imagine the terror. What happened to him?
Well, his team on the roof, they were watching this unfold in horror as he was being engulfed in flames. And they managed to cut him loose just in time. He landed on the balcony below, badly burned, but alive. And you know what? He refused medical attention and immediately rejoined the assault.
Wow, that's incredible. So while this is all happening, what's going on inside the building, what about PC Locke and that hidden revolver?
It was pure pandemonium. Flashbangs were going off, SAS troopers shouting commands, hostages scrambling for cover, just trying to stay out of the crossfire. And in the middle of all this chaos, PC Locke saw his chance.
So this was his moment. The moment he could finally use that weapon he'd kept hidden for so long.
Right as the SAS burst into the room where Locke and Saleem were, the commotion provided the perfect cover. Locke lunged at Saleem, tackling him to the ground.
A hand-to-hand struggle in the middle of all that.
Yeah.
What happened next? Did he manage to overpower Saleem?
It was a brutal fight. Saleem was strong and they were grappling fiercely. But then for a split second, Saleem's attention was diverted by the approaching SAS. And Locke seized his chance. He broke free, drew his revolver, and aimed it straight at Saleem's head.
That's amazing. How did Saleem react? Did he give up immediately?
Not at all. Panic set in. He started pleading for his life, even tried to lie. Said he'd been working to get the hostages released all along.
Quite the change of tune. How did Locke respond?
Locke, despite everything he had been through, showed incredible restraint. He didn't fire. He held Saleem at gunpoint until the SAS arrived.
That must have taken a lot of willpower, especially after what Saleem had put him through. What happened when the SAS got there?
They instantly recognized the danger and moved to take Saleem down. But in all the confusion, Saleem managed to break free from Locke for a moment and lunged for his machine gun. Luckily, Locke had a really firm grip on Saleem's wrist and stopped him from reaching the weapon.
That was close. What happened next? Was Saleem finally subdued?
Yeah, the SAS took over and quickly took Saleem down, ended his desperate attempt to regain control.
So after 6 days of agonizing uncertainty, the siege was finally over. Were all the hostages safe?
Sadly, no. One hostage had been killed before the raid, and another was tragically caught in the crossfire during the assault. But thanks to the incredible courage and expertise of the SAS, the majority of the hostages were rescued safely.
What about the hostage takers themselves? What happened to them?
5 of the 6 gunmen were killed during the raid. The only one who survived, Fauzi Nijad, was captured and later sentenced to life in prison for his part in the siege.
It really shows you that even with all the meticulous planning and expert execution, these situations can have devastating consequences. We've talked about PC Locke's bravery and the SAS's incredible tactics, but I'm curious about the bigger picture. Did this event change how we think about counterterrorism?
The Iranian embassy siege was a real turning point. It changed how people saw the SAS and how the UK approached counterterrorism.
In what way? What specific changes did it bring about?
Before this, the SAS mostly operated in secret. Their activities were very hush-hush. But the raid was broadcast live on television. Those images of SAS troopers abseiling down the embassy walls captured the nation's attention. They became heroes overnight.
Yeah, it was a powerful thing to watch. It wasn't just a news story. It was like a thriller playing out in real time.
Exactly. And that change in public perception had a huge impact. The SAS saw a surge in recruitment, their funding was increased, and their position as the UK's leading counterterrorism force was cemented.
They became a symbol of national strength, a way of deterring future threats. But beyond the public image, did Operation Nimrod actually influence counterterrorism strategies?
Absolutely. The success of the operation showed how vital it was to have detailed planning, specialized training, and that element of surprise in hostage rescue situations. It became a model for similar operations all over the world. It proved that a coordinated and decisive response to terrorism could be effective.
It's amazing to think that a single event, as terrifying as it was, actually helped shape the global response to these kinds of threats.
You're right. The Iranian embassy siege underlined the need for dedicated counterterrorism units who could react quickly and decisively. Many countries saw what the SAS achieved, and they reevaluated their own capabilities. They invested in training and equipping their own specialized forces inspired by the SAS success.
So in a way, it raised the bar for counterterrorism efforts around the world. It's remarkable that such a localized event had such far-reaching consequences.
It certainly does. And it reminds us that threats are always changing and that being able to adapt and being prepared are crucial in a world that's constantly evolving.
The Iranian embassy siege was a tense, dramatic, and ultimately tragic event that has left its mark on history. We've explored the motivations of the hostage takers, the bravery of those caught in the middle, and the decisive actions of the SAS that brought the crisis to a close. It's a story that continues to resonate, reminding us of the complexities of terrorism and the importance of resilience when facing danger.
And it highlights the courage of individuals like PC Locke, who found themselves in extraordinary circumstances and acted with incredible bravery.
This is a great case for Simon and Tom to talk about in their weekly review on Sunday. But in the meantime, tune in tomorrow for another great true crime episode.